Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine getting a dinner bill for, what was it, $6,800.
Yeah, I mean, that's staggering, like a down payment territory for some things.
Exactly. And then you hear about someone selling family jewelry because they lost money in crypto. It's just wild.
And maybe the most shocking one, using your own son's social security number
Mm-hmm.
for veneers for someone else.
Right. It just hits you. It makes you stop and really ask, what would you actually spend? What lines would you cross just to keep someone from, like, leaving you?
Well, this deep dive, we're really plunging into that messy intersection of money, our emotions, our identity, really.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at that powerful need for connection, the pressure to look a certain way, and sometimes the really, really desperate things people do.
Yeah, the stories we've got here are incredibly honest, sometimes, frankly, unsettling. They give these glimpses into really private struggles.
Absolutely. It's almost like holding up a mirror to, some hidden anxieties we all might feel about modern life. And it's all reflected in how we handle our money or don't handle it.
Totally. You see it with trying to fit into new groups like wealthy friends or the unspoken, like, weight of family obligations.
And those quiet battles we fight inside, the insecurities driving some of these choices.
So our goal here, just to be clear, isn't to judge anyone in these stories.
No, not at all. It's really about understanding why. What's driving these financial decisions? What are the consequences?
We want to unpack the motivations, basically, and hopefully offer you, listening, some clarity, maybe those aha moments about why these things happen, maybe even in our own lives.
Exactly. Those moments where it just clicks.
Okay, so let's start with Sarah. In just 2 weeks, she spends $1,200 on clothes from Zara, Revolve, Shein.
Yeah, fast fashion kind of places, all to try and fit in with her boyfriend Logan's wealthier friends down in Miami.
It paints such a clear picture, right? Someone projecting this image of wealth that just isn't her actual financial reality.
And what's really interesting there is that status anxiety thing.
Yeah.
Logan isn't necessarily telling her, buy this.
Mm-hmm.
But the environment itself, this whole Miami scene, creates this subtle pressure. She feels she has to keep up, signal that she belongs through how she looks.
And it shines a light on that really awkward gap between how things seem and how they are. Logan even jokes, like, if you're broke, just say that.
Oof.
Yeah, and she can't even laugh it off. So the debt climbs fast, $3,400, using those buy now, pay later things.
Yeah, Afterpay, Klarna, those kinds of services.
Right. And the stress starts messing with everything. She's dreading brunches, canceling appointments, the very thing she was spending the money for.
Well, that's the hook with buy now, pay later, isn't it? It feels more affordable because it's split up. Smaller payments seem manageable.
Until they're not.
Exactly. It makes it really easy to spend more than you realize and lose track of the total, which is just what happened to Sarah.
So the breaking point seems to be that Instagram photo at the Good Time Hotel pool. Trying to show she fits in, but it backfires.
Her boss sees it.
Her boss sees it, messages her, and suddenly she has to face the music about her shaky finances. And that $400 swimsuit she couldn't really afford.
And her coping mechanism. Avoiding her bank app, only looking at the Afterpay balance.
Yeah, like trying to ignore a fire by just looking at one little flicker.
That avoidance is such a common response psychologically when we're under financial stress. You focus on the small thing you can manage just to feel okay for a minute.
But it doesn't fix the big picture.
Not at all. It's short-term relief. That's it.
Then the breakup happens, she moves, and she's selling those clothes, the ones that still smell like Miami saltwater on Depop.
Wow.
It loops right back to that first question. What would you buy to keep someone? She bought an image, it wasn't sustainable, and poof.
The relationship was gone too.
Yeah. It really makes you ask yourself, maybe ask you listening, how much debt are you maybe hiding from a partner? Or shoot, even from yourself?
That's a heavy question. And it kind of leads us straight into Darren's story, which takes financial desperation somewhere else entirely.
Right. He's already dealing with serious stuff. The IRS is garnishing his wages.
Meaning they're taking money directly from his paycheck for debts.
Yeah, plus child support issues. His Discover card is frozen.
Yeah.
It's bad. And then he meets Lana.
Okay. And Lana wants veneers, the cosmetic teeth things, gets a quote for $7,400.
And Darren, seemingly out of nowhere, just promises he'll pay for it.
But how, given his situation?
Well, this is the kicker. He uses his teenage son's social security number to get a $10,000 care credit loan.
Oh, no, that's identity theft, fraud against his own son.
It's a huge breach of trust, massive legal issues, family issues.
Yeah.
It just speaks to the incredible pressure he must have felt.
Or the extreme lengths he thought he needed to go to keep Lana happy, maybe? To secure her affection?
Probably. It shows how, the idea of romance can just totally warp your judgment sometimes. You ignore huge red flags.
And the fallout is immediate, right?
Devastating. Lana starts pulling away, blocks him eventually, ghosts him.
And the son finds
The
out.
son discovers the fraud. Imagine finding that out about your parent.
Just heartbreaking. And then Lana's social media post. What did it say?
Something like, sometimes love is a transaction. Sometimes you just forget the receipt. Just cold.
Oh, talk about adding insult to injury.
It really forces that question. Would you rather lose your savings or lose the love you basically begged for?
And in his case, he lost both. And his son's trust, which is maybe the worst part.
Absolutely. It just shows, doesn't it? Trying to build something real on a purely transactional thing. It's shaky ground.
Yeah, when love gets tangled up with money like that, instead of actual connection, it's usually going to fall apart. Buying love is costly, emotionally, financially.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, let's talk about Danielle. Her story is wrapped up in grief, losing her mother.
Right. She inherits her mom's apartment, all the bills that come with it, right when she loses her job. And her unemployment checks are delayed.
It's like a triple whammy. Just bam, 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 one hardship after another.
So faced with this, sudden financial cliff, she tries something desperate, tries to flip her tax refund using crypto.
Cryptocurrency, yeah. Which we know can be incredibly volatile. Risky.
Super risky.
Yeah.
And, yeah, doesn't work out. She loses most of it. It was a gamble born out of needing a quick fix for a huge problem.
And then it gets even harder to hear. She starts selling her mom's jewelry on Facebook Marketplace.
Things she inherited.
Oh.
Heirlooms.
Yeah. And she makes up the story about a break-in to cover it up, files a police report and everything.
Wow. The lengths we go to avoid facing the truth, even to family.
Until her sister Lee figures it out, and the message Lee sends just goes unanswered. That silence says everything.
It really does. And you see how her other spending, the small stuff like gas station coffees, scrolling online late at night, it feels like trying to cope.
Had to fill that huge hole her mom left.
Exactly. Grief is so powerful, so complex. It messes with you in ways you don't expect. And sometimes money decisions get tangled up in trying to soothe that pain, find some comfort.
Even if it involves deception, it seems like it came from a place of just trying to feel secure again after everything fell apart.
It raises that really tough question, doesn't it? Have you ever sold something truly meaningful, something sacred, just to feel safe, even for a moment?
Yeah. Okay, Melanie's story is different again. This is about keeping up appearances, that facade of success.
Right. She tells her family she's making almost double what she actually earns, claims 98Ks in tech, but really makes 54Ks in marketing.
And she feels this huge pressure to be the provider, to help her sister and her mom financially. Is that like imposter syndrome?
It could definitely be linked to that, feeling like you're faking it, terrified of being found out. That pressure to be the successful one can be crushing.
So she's building this whole illusion, smiling through a rent hike, using balance transfer.
Which is just moving debt around, often to cards with temporary low interest. It hides how much credit she's actually using.
It sounds so stressful, like juggling plates that are about to crash.
It is. It's a precarious house of cards, built on good intentions, wanting to help her family, but it's not sustainable.
And the things she does to keep it going. Zelling money to her sister, taking out a personal loan, she says, is for debt consolidation.
But really uses it for rent, food, a new mattress, even a new iPhone. All props for the facade.
Yeah. Until her card gets declined buying toothpaste. Something so small, but it just shows how close to the edge she is.
That's often how it happens. The small, everyday thing is the final straw.
And then lying to her boss about bad Wi-Fi so she doesn't have to go into the office because she literally can't afford it.
It just screams desperation, doesn't it? The weight of those expectations, internal and external.
It really makes you wonder, have you ever lied about being, okay, just put on a brave face because your family needed that illusion, needed you to be the strong one?
It's a heavy burden. Sacrificing your own stability for an image, even out of love. Yeah. It happens more than we think, probably.
Okay, Jasmine's story. This one has that weird split, right? Her online life versus reality.
Totally. Online, she's the internet's softest soul, huge TikTok following, all peace and light.
But behind the scenes, $17,000 deep in credit card debt. It's such a stark contrast.
And the trigger seems to be her therapist just stopping contact abruptly, cutting off that major emotional support.
That's rough. So her response is, retail therapy? But like spiritual retail therapy.
Kind of, yeah. She starts buying crystals, altar kits, moon ritual subscriptions, tarot decks,
Hmm.
spending nearly $10,000 on what she calls emotional maintenance.
Mostly using Affirm and Klarna again, those buy now, pay later options.
Right. It feels like she's trying to soothe herself, regulate her emotions through buying these things, trying to find comfort externally.
It's that idea of buying validation, maybe, or trying to buy healing. She even says she sees the spending as an offering to help her heal, stop pretending.
While also posting online about letting go of financial scarcity.
Oh, the irony. As
Yeah.
she's juggling minimum payments and overdraft fees.
It really highlights the pressure of
雨下着眼，我的爱一触就将愈合。
Like the version of yourself you wish you were.
that curated online self can become a shield. But it can also fuel this cycle of spending to try and become that image, especially if you're getting validation for it online.
Okay, Tyrell and Tasha. This feels almost like a classic story of trying to buy love or maybe buy freedom for someone else.
It starts pretty normally, right? Meet at a wine tasting, connect emotionally, late night talks. But she's married, unhappily.
And she mentions she can't afford to leave her husband. That seems to be the key phrase.
It plants that seed in Tyrell's mind. He thinks money is the obstacle.
So he takes out a $12,000 personal loan at a really high interest rate, like 19.4% APR.
Which means he'll pay back way more than $12,000 over time.
And he does it specifically to give her the money to leave her marriage.
That emotional connection they built must have felt incredibly real to him. He likely projected his own hopes onto the situation.
And then he wires her the whole amount with a note. Your life starts now. Such a grand gesture.
But based on an assumption, right? That this is what she truly wanted and needed.
And then she ghosts him. And he finds out she went back to her husband.
Ouch! That is harsh. That note, your life starts now, must just echo in his head.
Totally. It really hits home.
Right.
Would you pay someone's way out of a bad situation if you believed, maybe wrongly, that their unhappiness was the only thing keeping them from being with you?
It's such a clear example of trying to fix deep emotional issues with cash. His generosity, even if well-intentioned, was built on a shaky foundation. He didn't see the whole picture.
And it left him holding the bag financially and emotionally.
Absolutely. You got to understand the real motivations, not just act on what you hope is true.
Okay, Natalie's story. This one's about chasing status again, but also, like, actively dodging reality. Her student loan debt is huge, $84,000.
And instead of buckling down, she uses her master's program refund check for more spending.
Calling it field research for her thesis, that's quite a justification.
It really is. She's spending on sheen halls, VIP retreats, dating app upgrades, all framed as academic work. It smells like present bias, prioritizing now over later.
Yeah, definitely. There's this huge disconnect between the debt looming over her and how she's acting day to day.
She's choosing the immediate buzz, the image, over tackling the long-term problem. That field research excuse is just a way to rationalize it, avoid the stress.
And she's even dating for money, skipping credit card payments, ignoring the bills piling up.
Until it bites her, right? Academic probation.
Yep. And her justifications get even more out there. Compounded grief, manifesting a sponsorship deal. It's all deflection.
It really makes you think. Have you ever basically maxed out your future credit, your future self's well-being, just to feel good or look good right now?
It's tempting, that instant gratification, but the consequences later.
They always arrive eventually. And Natalie's story shows how that desire for the now can lead to real future instability.
Okay, Simon. His story starts with grief too, his father's death. He inherits these rare coins with a note.
Yeah, for when you need it, but only if you really need it. A really touching, responsible kind of inheritance.
But his way of coping is unexpected. He starts subscribing to an OnlyFans creator, someone who reminds him of his ex.
Grief hits everyone differently. It's personal. For Simon, this online connection seems to offer some kind of comfort, maybe a distraction from the loss.
And those coins, meant for a real emergency, they become the funding source.
He sells them off bit by bit to pay for the subscription, back rent, tips for the creator.
And when the coins run out, he doesn't stop. He opens a new credit card.
Suggests there's maybe something deeper going on than just processing grief, right? A need being met, perhaps temporarily.
He calls it grief processing, but it feels like more. It makes you ask, what would you spend money on? Maybe money you shouldn't, just to feel chosen, just to feel seen or connected, even fleetingly.
Yeah, it touches on that vulnerability during grief. We might reach for coping mechanisms that aren't actually healthy in the long run. That online transaction feels like connection, but it doesn't heal the underlying pain.
Jason's story is next, a real cautionary tale about those get-rich-quick schemes.
Definitely. He meets Mia. She spins this tale about crypto fortunes to be made.
And Jason already has some savings, but Mia convinces him to borrow more, $9,500.
From his brother, Klarna, credit cards,
Yeah.
multiple places, all based on her word.
That pull of easy money, especially when someone sounds confident, maybe throws around jargon, it's strong. He clearly got swept up in the hype, the fear of missing out.
And then the crypto market crashes. Mia vanishes. Poof.
And the worst part, his fiancée leaves him at the altar, or close to it. The financial loss torpedoed the relationship.
Just devastating, losing the money, the trust, the future he thought he had, all chasing someone else's dream.
Yeah. It makes you think, what would you risk on a promise that wasn't even yours to begin with?
It really underscores the dangers of speculation, especially when it's fueled by hype and someone else's influence.
雨下着夜，我的爱一触就将遇见。
Right. She has this online image, this brand, but her income is pretty modest. Yet she feels pressure from her audience, from herself, to keep growing, investing.
So she's pouring money into equipment, retreats, things to boost the brand.
While struggling to pay rent. It shows the huge financial strain that can come with maintaining that online persona, meeting follower expectations.
And she's hiding eviction notices while posting about manifesting abundance. The disconnect is jarring.
Totally. The curated online world versus the messy reality.
Then she posts that viral TikTok, kind of hinting she needs a way out right as she's facing eviction. It's like the mask slipped for a second.
It really shows the hidden struggle behind a perfectly polished feed. It poses that question. Have you ever kept a dream alive by, well, ignoring the rent, prioritizing the image over basic needs?
That pressure to project success online, even when things are falling apart, it can lead you down a really unsustainable path.
Absolutely. It's a precarious way to live.
And finally, Eddie, this one feels like it's about guilt, control, maybe addiction.
It starts with a gift. His retired dad gives him $7,000 specifically for taxes. A really generous, helpful gesture.
And Eddie immediately gambles it all away, just like that.
Wow. That's impulsive, destructive behavior.
Yeah.
Especially with money meant for something specific, given in trust, likely driven by that desire for a quick win, maybe a rush, a feeling of control he lacks elsewhere.
Then the cover-up. Lying to his dad, saying the taxes are paid, avoiding his calls when the IRS notice inevitably arrives.
Shame must be immense, and the debt just grows with penalties.
Yeah. And the image of him just sitting alone, watching game highlights filled with regret. It's potent. It shows the isolation that comes when you break trust like that.
It really makes you ask, would you gamble your family's trust, their support, just for that fleeting feeling of being in control? Or maybe just for the thrill?
Yeah. It shows the deep emotional fallout from financial irresponsibility, how it ripples through relationships. That broken trust with his dad, huge price to pay.
So looking back at all these stories, these incredibly personal accounts,
You really see these common threads, don't you? This deep human need for validation, for acceptance.
yeah, or yearning for love, connection, sometimes just needing an escape from pain, from hard realities.
Or wanting to be someone else, that desired identity. And money becomes the tool.
The tool they reach for.
Yeah.
But it's often flawed, right? It doesn't actually deliver what they need long term.
Exactly. And you see the same patterns over and over. The hidden debt, the deception, the huge gap between how things look and how they really are.
It becomes so clear that money, in these cases, is acting like a temporary fix, like a bandage on a much deeper wound.
And it rarely solves the real problem. Often makes it worse, actually. Creates new problems.
Precisely.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I guess the main takeaway is just how deeply our emotional lives drive our financial behavior. Often in ways that aren't sustainable, ways that damage trust, damage ourselves.
Exactly. And maybe for you listening, it's worth reflecting on these stories. Think about your own life. Are there areas where maybe you're spending to project a certain image?
Or to fill an emotional need.
Yeah. What are the unseen costs that might be adding up for you?
It's really valuable, I think, to take some time for that honest look inside, at that connection between your emotions and your money.
Definitely a lot to chew on there. Hopefully this deep dive gave you some useful perspectives, some things to think about as you navigate all this complex stuff in your own life. She emptied her savings.
He drained his 401k.
And a college dropout hid. Thousands in debt.
Huh?
What connects these? Well, they're snapshots, really, of how money gets tangled up in our personal lives, often with some pretty painful results.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. This isn't, your typical finance show about budgeting or stocks.
No spreadsheets here.
Not today. We're looking at the human stories, the messy stuff that happens when money and relationships collide. Think betrayal, hidden truths, the emotional fallout.
We've gone through quite a few accounts. People hiding debt, making huge sacrifices for someone, the pressure to keep up appearances. It touches on everything, like Klarna, credit cards, savings, even retirement funds.
Yeah, and our goal isn't to give financial advice. Let's be clear on that.
Right.
It's more about understanding why. Why do these things happen? What do these stories tell us about, well, ourselves and our connections? It's about the human side of the balance sheet.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First up, something that feels really common, but is often kept quiet. Hidden debt. How it just eats away at trust. We can start with Laura and Mark.
Right. Laura and Mark seem like a normal couple, but then Laura finds out Mark's run up over, what was it, $7,000?
Over $7,000, yeah. On Klarna. Stuff she had no idea about.
And that's the thing with these buy now, pay later services, isn't it? They seem small, manageable at first, a little purchase here, another there, but they can pile up fast. It's almost like a blind spot in how couples manage money sometimes, these little debts accumulating under the radar.
And here's the kicker. Laura used $10,000 from their daughter's college fund.
Wow.
Yeah. Trying to make the minimum payments, hoping it would just disappear, I guess. And Mark. He said he was getting help for drinking, but he was still secretly buying clothes from Shine. More sneakers.
So there's this disconnect, right? The story he's telling versus what he's actually doing. The secret spending, even while supposedly addressing another problem, it points to maybe avoidance or maybe it's a coping mechanism.
Whatever it was, it undermined everything financially.
And emotionally. The secrecy becomes this, physical representation of the dishonesty.
Absolutely. It created this silence, this feeling of betrayal for Laura. And it's not just them. We saw this pattern elsewhere. Take Eli. College dropout, ends up hiding $23,000 in debt.
From Shein again and OnlyFans.
Yeah, while working part-time and couch surfing.
That really highlights the pressure, doesn't it? Especially for younger people, the consumer culture, the online world. Easy credit is everywhere. And the shame, you mentioned he was hiding it from his mom.
Totally. Eviction notices piling up, dodging her calls, hiding packages, just complete isolation driven by this financial shame. He actually said a TikTok about that specific feeling, financial shame, was what made him finally face it.
Interesting. It shows how widespread this feeling is, even if people don't talk about it openly.
So when you put Laura and Mark next to Eli, you see this common thread, right? Secrecy, driven by shame or fear, maybe.
Exactly. It's not just the numbers on the page. The debt itself becomes this wall blocking real communication, whether it's with a partner or a family. It just erodes the foundation.
It really does. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about sacrifices. People putting huge amounts of money, sometimes their whole future, on the line, often for relationships or dreams, and then it doesn't work out.
Yeah, like David. He took $25,000 out of his 401k.
His retirement fund.
To launch a wellness startup.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately failed pretty quickly, left him with, over $12,000 in credit card debt too?
Yeah, and the business failure wasn't even the only loss. His girlfriend, Mia, left. The financial strain was just too much.
That's brutal. When your personal finances and your big dream are so tied together, the failure hits twice as hard. You've got the money loss and then the personal loss on top.
And he had that thought, what if I'd done more? That's so relatable, that self-blame.
Oh, absolutely. Even when things are out of your control. But sometimes effort isn't the issue. Some losses just happen.
True. Then you have Ethan and Rachel. Ethan seemed to think borrowing more money would fix their marriage problems.
Right, about $12,000 across Klarna, Venmo, cash advances.
Like throwing money at the problem would magically solve the deeper issues.
It's almost like, magical thinking financially. He was trying to buy a solution, maybe, but even while they were in counseling, he was still secretly buying designer watches.
So again, the secret spending. Maybe trying to fill some kind of void with purchases.
It seems like it. And Rachel's note when she left, I can't afford us anymore. That says so much, doesn't it?
It's powerful.
It's not just about the literal cost. It's the emotional cost, the relational cost. The whole situation became unaffordable in every sense.
So both David and Ethan's stories, they really show how financial desperation can lead people to risk everything. Stability, relationships for something uncertain. It's not just a financial gamble.
No, you're gambling with your security, your connections. You see people trying to use money as a tool, right?
Hmm.
To chase a dream, save a marriage, maybe even just cope. But when that tool isn't enough or it's used badly, the fallout goes way beyond the bank account.
It's a risky tool.
Hmm.
Okay, let's talk about appearances. The pressure to look a certain way, live a certain lifestyle, and the financial toll that can take. Jenna, for example, $22,000 in debt.
Wow. And what was that from?
Luxury clothes, beauty treatments, trying to make it as an influencer,
Mm.
funding sponsored posts, all for her Instagram image.
Ah, the Instagram effect, that curated perfection, it really drives home the pressure, especially online. You build this identity, this brand.
But the reality can be completely different. She was presenting herself as this rising star, but behind the scenes, unpaid rent, dodging the landlord.
That contrast is stark, isn't it? The shiny online persona versus the precarious offline reality. It makes you ask, what's that online validation really worth? Is it worth the debt, the anxiety?
It's a huge price. And then there's Tara, a single mom, secretly dealing with an $8,500 gambling debt.
Oh, that's tough. Especially with kids involved.
Yeah, trying to hide it from them, just hoping things will magically get better tomorrow.
Yeah.
That tomorrow will be different kind of hope.
That sounds like the cycle of addiction, that desperate hope. And the secrecy, probably driven by guilt, wanting to provide but being trapped by the debt. It's a terrible conflict.
You just picture the bills piling up, the creditors calling, while she's trying to keep things normal for the kids. It's heartbreaking.
So Jenna and Tara, different situations, but a similar theme. The pressure to project something success online for Jenna, maybe normalcy or hope for Tara, leads to financial disaster and isolation.
Yeah, the root cause seems emotional, doesn't it? Seeking validation or maybe escapism in Tara's case. But the financial decisions driven by those needs just create more problems.
Definitely. Which leads us into another really painful area. Let's call it emotional debt. When money gets tangled up with feelings of obligation, manipulation, and betrayal.
Like Carla. Met a guy on Hinge, sent him over $5,000.
$5,250, yeah. For what? Car repairs and rent?
Supposedly. Turns out he used it for a trip to Tulum, then blocked her.
Ouch. That's just predatory. Using that line, "You're the only one who believes in me."
Ugh, yeah. Classic manipulation, preying on empathy.
It's such a violation. Then you have Derek and Naomi. They used their wedding fund, $12,000 on a business idea.
A relationship coaching brand, ironically.
Right, which failed. And then the engagement was off.
And their explanation to family was just vague.
Mm.
We're evolving.
It feels like a way to sidestep the awkward truth, maybe. That the shared dream tied up with that wedding money fell apart and took the relationship with it. The money meant for their future became a symbol of the failure.
Yeah, definitely adds another layer of hurt. And Aaliyah, too. Ran up $9,000 in debt trying to impress a sugar daddy.
Who then ghosted her.
Exactly. And it didn't just cost her money, it caused a huge fight with her cousin. Damaged that relationship, too.
So she tried to buy status or affection, essentially, and ended up losing money and a family connection. It's a double loss.
All these stories, Carla's, Derek, and Naomi's, Aaliyah's, they point to this idea of emotional debt collection, making financial moves based on wanting love or validation or just connection.
And the results are often devastating, both financially and emotionally. It's like money becomes a substitute for what they're really seeking, believing in someone, building a future, feeling valued. These deep needs drive financial choices that aren't logical, just emotional and costly.
It's a really dangerous pattern. Let's look now at how this stuff can just chip away at your self-worth. Mira's story is tough. Nearly $10,000 spent on wedding plans.
Dress, venue, deposit, photographer, the works.
Yeah, only for her fiancé Ryan to finally admit he didn't want to get married.
Oh no, leaving her with the debt.
Leaving her with the debt, even after returning what she could. Imagine that, the rejection, plus the bills.
That's just a profound level of betrayal. The debt becomes this constant, painful reminder.
Horrible. Then there's Kyle, tipped an OnlyFans creator $12,000.
$12,000? How?
He even borrowed from his 401k for someone he'd never actually spoken to.
Wow. While at the same time,
He couldn't help his own mother with her medical bills.
that contrast is jarring. It speaks volumes about searching for connection or maybe importance in places that aren't real, while neglecting actual relationships and responsibilities. That disconnect between the online fantasy and the offline reality is huge.
The irony is just staggering. And Jason, he spent $38,000 over 2 years
$38,000 on what?
trying to keep his ex-girlfriend's boutique afloat. A failing boutique.
And did she appreciate it?
Apparently, not even an acknowledgement. Zero thanks.
So he's pouring money into a past relationship, maybe trying to stay relevant or needed. It's like paying for a connection that isn't really there anymore.
All these stories, Mira, Kyle, Jason, they really show the danger of using money to try and feel wanted or important or loved. It's like trying to use cash to fix an emotional wound.
It's a financial band-aid on a deep hurt. And it never works, does it? It just leads to more financial pain and often makes you feel even worse about yourself. It highlights that underlying vulnerability, that search for something fundamental, validation, connection through financial means.
Such a destructive path. Okay, let's talk about outright deception. The lies people tell about money within their closest relationships. We have Leo. He got cheated on, divorced.
Right, and still gave his ex-wife over $9,000 afterwards.
Yeah, supporting her.
Yeah.
Only for her to ghost him completely after he paid for her trip to Aspen.
Oof. It's like he was trying to buy back something that was already gone, maybe, or prove something. But you can't buy loyalty or fix broken trust with money. That Emerson quote feels relevant here. Money often costs too much.
It really does. Then Nadia. She racked up like $27,000 in buy now, pay later debt. Huge amount.
$27,491, yeah.
And what did she tell her fiancé?
Lied. Said she'd inherited $50,000. Whoa. That's a big lie to build a future on. It just screams shame and pressure around the debt, doesn't it? Trying to buy time, maybe, or keep up appearances. But it creates this incredibly unstable foundation, muting the debt collectors. That's just delaying the inevitable.
Totally. A house of cards, really. And Tina, this one's rough. She sold her son's PlayStation
Oh, man.
and used their emergency rent money to cover her boyfriend's crypto loss, $19,000.
$19,000 he lost in crypto.
Yep. And after she sacrifices her son's things, their rent money, he leaves her.
That is just devastating. Prioritizing his financial mess over her own family's security. That's misplaced loyalty to an extreme degree. And selling her son's stuff, that just adds another layer of pain.
These stories, Leo, Nadia, Tina, they paint such a grim picture of how financial lies just destroy things. The secrecy, the unbalanced sacrifices, it causes damage that's often impossible to fix.
You really see the imbalance, don't you? Often one person is carrying the weight, trying to help or please or just hold things together, while the other is maybe oblivious or worse, exploiting the situation. That asymmetry is key to why it's so destructive.
Such an unfair dynamic. It can lead people to desperate places. Let's look at some of those desperate measures and the shame that follows. Dahlia co-signed a Tesla lease.
For a guy she just met.
Basically, met him at a networking event, took out loans for him too, then he disappeared, leaving her with all the debt.
That's a huge risk to take so quickly. It suggests maybe a strong desire to be seen as supportive or to lock down the relationship fast. But trusting someone that much financially so soon, it's a hard lesson.
She said she felt like she paid to be his proof of worth. That's just sad.
It really is. Then, Marcus and Talia, they had this amazing online life, looked super wealthy.
Right. But the reality, 5 months behind on rent, using buy now, pay later for all the luxury stuff they posted.
Another case of that huge gap between the online performance and the offline reality. Fighting about money constantly behind the scenes, but posting perfect golden hour selfies. The pressure to project success can drive really unsustainable behavior.
It's a reminder you just can't trust everything you see online. And Samira, her own brother, used her identity.
Oh, no. To do what?
Took out a $13,884 debt consolidation loan for his gambling debts.
Using her identity, that's fraud. And from a brother.
Yeah, completely fractured their relationship, left her dealing with the collectors.
That's a profound betrayal. Identity theft is bad enough, but from family. Especially to cover gambling, it damages trust on such a deep level.
These stories, Dahlia, Marcus, and Talia, Samira, they show how financial panic can push people to do damaging, sometimes illegal things, and the result is debt, broken trust, and this lasting heavy shame.
And it often comes back to that violation of trust, doesn't it? Exploiting kindness, manipulating feelings, outright deception. The financial hit is bad, but the damage to connection, to trust itself, that's often worse.
It's a terrible weight to carry. Which brings us to the breaking point. When the pressure gets so intense, people do extreme things. Rhea cashed out her entire 401k.
Her retirement savings, why?
Gave $7,000 to her high school sweetheart who reappeared in her life. Then he vanished again.
Oh, Rhea. That's heartbreaking. And letting herself be vulnerable to that old connection.
And the worst part, he posts pictures on Instagram with a new girlfriend shortly after.
Oh, that's just cruel. Adding public humiliation to the financial loss. And raiding a 401k. The long-term impact of that is huge. A very costly act of hope, I guess.
Devastating. Then there's Isaiah. He started selling fake sneakers.
Counterfeits. To make money.
Yeah. To cover overdue rent, utilities. Said he was constantly paranoid, stressed out.
I bet. That's the desperation, isn't it? Trying to avoid homelessness, but stepping into illegal activity brings its own set of fears. The stress must have been immense.
Yeah, he wanted to open his own sneaker store someday, but got caught in this cycle of fear instead.
Yeah.
And Janelle, she lied about having cancer.
She did what? Why?
To get out of paying her share for a bridesmaid trip she couldn't afford.
That's extreme. Did it work?
Financially, yes, she avoided the cost. But socially, total isolation, her friends found out.
Of course, the lie was bound to unravel. It shows how far the fear of financial embarrassment can push someone, even if it means destroying relationships.
All these stories, Rhea, Isaiah, Janelle, they just highlight how intense financial pressure can lead to these extreme choices, with massive personal costs that go way beyond money.
And shame is lurking underneath so often, isn't it? Shame about debt, shame about needing help, shame about perceived failures. It's such a powerful, destructive motivator.
It really is. So let's wrap up by looking at the final toll, the ultimate consequences. Maya had saved up over $8,000, hard-earned savings.
Yeah, $8,200. And her live-in boyfriend, Julian.
Drained it. Used her debit card for his own stuff while projecting this image of being successful online.
That's straight-up financial abuse. Exploiting her trust, her money, while living a lie online, a total betrayal and power imbalance.
A complete violation. Then Rob. He secretly invested their shared savings in crypto.
How much?
$12,000.
And lost it.
Secretly, without telling his wife.
Yeah, led to a total breakdown of trust between them. She was just quietly devastated.
That secrecy around shared money, it hits right at the core of the partnership, doesn't it? The trust, the shared future, gone. Repairing that breach is incredibly hard, maybe impossible sometimes.
That loss of trust often hurts more than the money. And lastly, Jasmine. An NYU student working as a barista, but trying to maintain this flawless online aesthetic.
Right. Racked up over $3,400 in buy now, pay later debt doing it.
Yeah. Felt totally isolated. Even started faking PR boxes she received to keep up the influencer illusion.
Wow. That brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? The pressure of the online image. Her story shows the emptiness of chasing that validation through stuff, sinking into debt, and becoming more isolated in the process.
These last few really underscore the main point, I think. The consequences aren't just financial. They erode trust, destroy relationships, damage your sense of self. Absolutely. And these aren't just random, isolated sob stories. They reflect broader issues, financial pressures, our emotional needs, the influence of social media, all mixing together in ways that can cause real hardship.
So pulling it all together, what we've seen is just how tangled money gets with our emotions, our relationships. It's rarely just about the money itself, you know.
Right.
It often exposes these deeper vulnerabilities, these fault lines, and the personal cost can be immense.
And like we said at the start, the point of this deep dive wasn't to hand out financial plans or judge anyone.
No, definitely not.
It was really about exploring that human side, trying to understand the why behind these financial choices, especially when relationships are involved.
Which kind of leaves us with something for you, the listener, to think about. Maybe reflect on the pressures we all feel around money and relationships in society today.
Or perhaps, think about times we might use money to try and fill an emotional need. How does your own relationship with money affect your connections with people, for better or worse?
Yeah, they're complex questions, definitely no easy answers.
None at all. But hopefully exploring these stories has given you some food for thought, maybe sparked some reflection on these dynamics in
Have
your
you
own
ever
world. Paid a price like far beyond the actual dollar amount for something you thought was love, or maybe security, belonging? Welcome to this deep dive. We're not just looking at balance sheets today, but really at the human stories behind them.
Exactly. It's about the why.
Yeah. Today, we're digging into a collection of these really personal accounts, people making big financial decisions driven by, well, the big emotions. Love, hope, sometimes desperation, and that very basic need to belong somewhere.
Right.
We've gathered stories where the debt isn't just numbers on a page. It's tied to, weddings that didn't happen, family loyalties pushed to the brink.
The real messy stuff.
Totally. And just the surprising lengths people go to, feel seen, feel valued. So our mission, if you like, is to unpack these stories, to pull out the insights, maybe some surprising truth about the non-financial costs, the emotional toll.
Beyond just don't spend more than you earn.
Right. It's the human element of debt, especially when it's tangled up with our deepest emotional needs.
And what really jumps out from these accounts right away is just how powerful our emotions are when it comes to money decisions, things we think should be rational.
Yeah.
We see people making these huge financial commitments, sometimes pretty impulsively, trying to lock down something you can't really touch, love, acceptance, validation.
Right.
And it becomes clear really quickly that chasing those feelings can carry a way heavier burden than just the initial price tag.
Okay, so let's dive into that first thing, this illusion of love and security, the kind some people try to, purchase. Let's talk about Samia. She wasn't someone who'd, always dreamed of a massive wedding, but her partner, Jaron, he had this very specific picture in his head.
Ah, the vision.
Exactly. Big ring, fancy party, designer dress, the whole thing. So Samia, she goes all in, racks up $19,600 in debt.
Wow.
Across different places, too. A firm for the dress, that was $2,800.
Okay, the buy now, pay later.
Yeah. Her Chase Sapphire card for the venue, that was $13,000, even after pay for the flowers.
So spreading it across these different payment methods.
Right. But here's where it just falls apart. Jaron loses his job 2 months before the wedding.
Oh, no.
And then, the night before the wedding, he just disappears. Vanishes. No call. Gone.
Just gone. Unbelievable.
So Samia's left, obviously heartbroken, but also with these constant reminders, bills from Affirm, Klarna, Chase, demanding payments for a wedding that never happened.
The cruelty of those automated payment reminders.
And she never even wore the dress. But
I know.
she's still making biweekly payments on it. It really makes you think, what's the pull? Why go into debt to fulfill someone else's dream like that?
Samia's situation, it really shows how tangled up our self-worth can get with, getting that approval from others, especially in relationships.
Totally.
Her wanting to meet Jaron's expectations, make his vision real, it led her to take on huge financial risks based on a relationship that, well, clearly wasn't solid. And that debt now, it's like this physical reminder of that broken promise and the vulnerability that drove her to buy those things in the first place. It really asks that question. Can money ever actually, guarantee feelings like love or security? These stories seem to say, probably not. It's risky.
Absolutely. And then you've got Nico. He took a completely different path to try and get his ex Marissa's attention back.
Oh.
So they'd broken up, but she was still, liking his posts, occasionally commenting. Then she starts posting about crypto.
Ah, the crypto angle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nico sees this as his in, a way to impress her. So he dives headfirst into crypto, Ethereum, staking, DeFi, the works.
I like that.
He empties his savings, that's $18,000, borrows $10,000 from his cousin,
Yeah.
then takes out a $44,000 personal loan,
Wow, he went all in for her attention.
all hoping to show Marissa he's successful, he's interesting, he gets the stuff. He'd send her screenshots of his supposed games, even sent her $2,000 in Ethereum, trying to be casual.
And her reaction?
Text back, damn lol.
That's it.
That's it. So he doubles down, invests more, but you know how these things go. The market crashes.
Yep.
His $72,000 portfolio drops to less than $5,000. And Marissa stops engaging completely. Now he's stuck with these huge loan payments every month. Is it just about validation, or is it also about, crafting this online identity through spending?
With Nico, yeah, the money decisions were clearly driven by wanting that external approval, trying to rekindle something. It wasn't sound financial strategy. It was an emotional gamble.
Right.
And what's fascinating is how easily that line blurs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Between real investment and what you could call performative wealth.
Especially online.
Performative wealth, I like that.
He was basically spending huge amounts for just the possibility of attention. It shows how strong that need for connection is, sometimes stronger than rational financial sense. And it also just highlights how volatile things like crypto are. Big potential wins, but also massive potential losses.
It's a pattern we see again with Emily and Jonah. They wanted that perfect wedding, the kind you see all over Pinterest, right? The Instagram wedding.
Yeah, but it was way, way beyond what they could actually afford. Even though they earned $93,000 combined per year, they financed almost everything.
Everything.
Her dress, $1,800 on Afterpay, the fancy decorative arch, a firm photographer, credit cards. Even the $1,600 for flowers was on an installment plan.
Wow. Piece by piece.
The wedding looked amazing. The photos were perfect. But their marriage started with $19,400 of debt looming over them.
Oof. Not a great start.
And, no surprise, that financial strain led to fights almost immediately. Jonah even accused Emily of caring more about the pictures than the marriage itself.
That's rough.
It makes you think, right? Those grand gestures, they fade, flowers die, memories get hazy. But that credit card bill, that tends to stick around.
Yeah, the interest keeps growing.
Is it like sometimes the perceived permanence of credit gets prioritized over the intended permanence of love? Unconsciously, maybe?
Emily and Jonah's story really puts a spotlight on that intense pressure from society, from social media's curated reality. Chasing that visually perfect wedding meant they put temporary aesthetics ahead of their long-term financial health and even the health of their relationship.
Yeah.
The debt became this huge stressor, this source of conflict. It just shows how money strain can eat away at even seemingly strong bonds. It really makes you question what we truly value, those external markers, or the actual foundation underneath.
And the last one in this section, Jason. He meets Lena on a dating app. She mentions offhand she likes guys who, have their lives together.
Okay, so he's in.
Jason, driving an old car, not much savings, decides he needs to project a different image. Second date. Super expensive restaurant. Then a weekend trip. Then a $3,400 Cartier bracelet for her birthday.
Whoa, how did he afford that?
All financed. Loans, credit cards. He took out a $12,000 personal loan with big monthly payments.
Just to keep up appearances.
Yeah. And Lena would say things like he was a man who provides, which made him feel great,
Yeah.
chosen.
The validation trap.
But by month 3, she's seeing someone else. Month 4, she's blocked him everywhere.
Ouch.
Leaving him with over 2 years of loan payments for a relationship that was basically already dead. It's just such a stark example of trying to buy affection that wasn't real to begin with.
Jason's experience is it's a painful reminder of how spending can be used to try and project an image or even, buy acceptance in a relationship.
Yeah.
His efforts to impress Lena with stuff just completely backfired. Left him hurt emotionally, obviously, but also deep in debt.
Yeah.
And what's really sad here is realizing that the act of trying to buy love often comes from insecurity.
Yeah.
And it can actually highlight that insecurity, maybe pushing the other person away.
Okay, let's shift gears. Our next section looks at the price of loyalty and obligation. The financial sacrifices people make for those they really care about.
Right, the family and friends angle. This gets complicated.
Take Andre. He's only 17. He quietly gambles away his mom's rent money, $1,400 on a sports betting app.
Oh, wow.
At 17, when she finds out, she's heartbroken but doesn't get angry. Instead, she pawns her watch, something precious to her, and tells the landlord the rent will be late.
She covered for him.
Yeah. Andre's overwhelmed with guilt, hides in his room for days. His mom doesn't tell anyone. She just carries that shame privately. It really shows the incredible lengths a parent might go to protect their kid, even when trust is totally broken. What makes a parent shield their child like that from the consequences?
Andre's story, it speaks volumes about that deep parent-child bond, that instinct to protect your kid, often at huge personal cost.
Yeah.
His mother's reaction, taking on the money problem and the shame, silently, it just shows that unconditional part of parental love. But it also brings up that tough question, doesn't it? Where's the line between protecting your child and maybe enabling behavior that could be harmful down the road?
It's a hard line to find. Then there's Martin, a father who made a truly devastating choice. He embezzled money from his condo HOA fund
Oh, wow.
to cover his son Liam's $28,000 loss from crypto trading
$28,000.
from the HOA. Yeah. Started small, thinking he'd pay it back when crypto recovered, but it didn't. An audit caught him. He denied it at first, but then confessed.
What happened to him?
Now he's 56, working a night shift at a warehouse, paying back a huge amount in restitution every month. His reason: he didn't want his son to feel like a failure.
He sacrificed everything for that.
And the really troubling part, Liam is still trading crypto, calls it his side income.
Oh, come on. He doesn't get it.
Doesn't seem like it. What drives a parent to go to such extremes like breaking the law just to shield their kid from feeling like they failed?
Martin's story is just such a stark example of how a parent's love, mixed with that strong desire to protect their child from disappointment, can lead to really serious ethical and legal mistakes.
Yeah.
His actions had huge consequences, not just for him, but for the whole community he betrayed. And what's really concerning, like you said, is the son seemingly not grasping the weight of his dad's sacrifice, still doing the thing that caused the crisis. It really highlights those complex family dynamics when money and emotional needs get all tangled up.
We also see sacrifices made for friendship, for belonging. Sarah's story, she agrees to be a bridesmaid.
Okay, the bridesmaid trap.
Totally. Suddenly, she's on the hook for an expensive dress, shoes, a pricey bachelorette trip she definitely couldn't afford, puts it all on buy now, pay later.
Oh, dear.
She gets so stretched thin, she can't make rent, misses therapy sessions, but she keeps saying yes to more wedding stuff. She just desperately wanted to feel included, part of the group.
The pressure is immense sometimes.
Then, the final blow, she gets cut from the final wedding guests list.
No. After all that.
Yep. She's shocked, hurt, obviously. And then she still has to keep paying off the debt for events she wasn't even fully part of. What does that say about the cost of trying to buy your way into belonging?
Sarah's experience just painfully shows the financial pressure that can come with social obligations and the real emotional hurt of being excluded. Her willingness to go into debt just to be part of it all ended in both money trouble and emotional pain. It really makes you ask, what's the real value of friendships that seem to require such a high financial entry fee, and the importance of setting boundaries?
So important. And lastly, in this section, Darren, he racked up $13,200 in credit card debt trying to help his brother who was struggling with addiction.
Addiction. That's always tough.
Started small, seemed like temporary help, but the lies, the demands, they just grew. Darren used his credit card thinking, it's just for now to get him through this.
Slippery slope.
But the minimum payment started eating up his income. He made huge personal sacrifices, strained his relationship with his girlfriend, sold some of his stuff.
Wow.
It wasn't until he got a critical overdraft notice that he finally made that agonizing choice to cut off contact with his brother. What does that tell us about the toll, emotional and financial, of supporting someone with addiction? And where do you draw the line for your own survival?
Darren's story just powerfully illustrates that immense burden, emotional and financial, that comes with supporting a loved one battling addiction. His loyalty, his refusal to give up at first, led him down this path of huge personal sacrifice and debt. It really underscores those incredibly difficult boundaries you sometimes have to set to protect yourself, even when it means facing painful truths about people you love deeply.
Moving into our third section, the lies we tell, often funded by sheer desperation.
Right. When the back's against the wall.
We start with Teresa. She desperately wanted her daughter to go to a 4-year college, believed it offered way better opportunities than the local community college.
A common parental desire.
But her income was just too high for financial aid, but way too low to actually afford the $43,000 a year tuition.
Caught in the middle.
So in desperation, she falsified the FFS forms, used an old address, hid some assets, didn't report income from a side gig.
Oh, wow. That's risky.
It worked. Her daughter got aid, moved into the dorm, totally unaware of what her mom did. But the consequences hit Teresa hard. An IRS audit.
Knew it.
Huge back taxes, penalties. Teresa, on her modest income, now has her wages garnished, has had to cut back drastically, all while hiding the truth from her daughter. What does that reveal about the lengths a parent might go, just wanting the best future for their kid?
Teresa's story vividly shows the extreme things a parent might do, driven by that deep desire to create opportunities for their child. Her choice to falsify those documents, while it came from love and desperation, led to serious legal and financial trouble for her. It brings up complex ethical questions, doesn't it, about the limits of parental sacrifice and the potential fallout from actions taken with good intentions, but dishonestly.
Now there's Tam and Lewis. They were just drowning in bills, debt collectors calling constantly.
Overwhelmed.
They saw a viral GoFundMe for fertility treatments and got an idea. They created a fake campaign. Our Journey to Family?
No, seriously.
Yeah. They weren't trying to conceive. They just needed money for overdue rent and other bills. Used stock ultrasound photos, wrote this heart-wrenching story about IVF costs.
How much did they raise?
Over $6,000 pretty quickly. Paid rent, caught up on bills, even treated themselves a bit.
Not the guilt.
Became unbearable. They shut it down after a donor asked for medical proof. Now, Tam finds it really hard to donate to real fertility fundraisers. She's haunted by what they did. What does that say about guilt as its own kind of non-financial debt?
Tam and Lewis's story really highlights the desperation that can push people towards deception when financial pressure feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
While the fake fundraiser gave them temporary relief, it came at a huge ethical price. It potentially damaged their own integrity, maybe even their ability to empathize with others genuinely struggling.
It just underscores that long-term psychological weight that can come with financial choices made out of desperation and dishonesty. Alana's story is particularly tough. She borrowed $8,400 from her dad, said it was for agent car repair.
Okay, where did it really go?
She used it to buy a luxury watch for her married boss, Victor.
Her married boss. Oh, no.
He'd been paying attention to her, complaining about his marriage. She even started skipping her own therapy to spend more time with him.
This sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
The expensive gift, it cost her big time. Victor pulled away soon after getting the watch, transferred offices, sent her a text basically ending things.
Wow. Used and discarded.
And her dad still thinks her car's running great. Elena's taking the bus to work. What does that show about seeking validation in the wrong places and how far someone might go deceiving loved ones in that pursuit?
Elena's story is just a heartbreaking example of how wanting validation, wanting connection can lead to profound deception and really bad financial judgment. Her actions, fueled by this misplaced hope for something with her boss, ended in big financial loss and emotional betrayal. And the fact she lied to her father, too, just shows the tangled web of lies people can build when emotional needs just overpower rational thought and ethics.
We also have another story with Andre. Remember him from before. This time, he was the one being lied to.
Okay, so he's on the receiving end now. By Lena again.
By Lena again. The same woman who deceived Jason. She spins this story about being stalked, being in a car accident, desperately needs $8,000.
And Andre.
He cared about her, felt this need to help someone he saw as vulnerable, sent her the money almost instantly.
Oh, Andre.
A week later, she's cut off all contact. 2 weeks later, he sees her posting on social media new clothes, accessories, looking like she hasn't a care in the world.
So, no stalker, no accident.
Nope, just his rent money, gone. What does that say about the cost of being too trusting, maybe too willing to believe someone you see as vulnerable?
Andre's experience is just a stark reminder of how vulnerable we can be when we develop strong feelings for someone and how that vulnerability can be exploited.
Yeah.
His quickness to help based on Lena's fake crisis just highlights that emotional investment we make and the painful fallout when that trust is completely shattered. It really raises that critical question about telling genuine need from manipulation and the importance of maybe a little healthy skepticism.
And finally in this section, Malika. She embezzled $19,200 from her boyfriend's business. She was helping him run it.
Wow, from her boyfriend. How did it start?
Small things, at first a new laptop, clothes, catching up on her own buy now, pay later bills. But when he started asking questions about the business finances, she panicked.
What did she do?
Fabricated this elaborate story about being pregnant and then having a miscarriage.
Oh my God. It's cruel. He was understandably devastated. She left soon after he found out the truth, when his accountant reviewed the books.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years, and he hasn't been in another relationship since. Why create such a huge, painful lie instead of just facing the money issue?
Malika's story is such a complex example of betrayal, driven by money needs and maybe a deep fear of confrontation in the relationship, creating that intricate web of lies, ending with the fake pregnancy and miscarriage. It has such a profound, lasting emotional impact on her boyfriend. It really forces us to look at the devastating consequences of dishonesty in intimate relationships and the deep wounds left by both the lies and the shattered trust. Okay, section 4. This is about the debt of appearance and belonging, the financial strain we put on ourselves trying to get that external validation.
Right, keeping up appearances.
Melissa, for instance. She finally found a therapist helping her work through some really deep trauma. But the sessions were out of network, a big weekly cost.
Therapy's expensive, yeah.
Her work hours get cut unexpectedly, so she makes a really tough call. Sells her car, her reliable if older car, just to afford 4 more weeks of therapy.
Wow, that's a huge sacrifice.
But after those 4 weeks, her therapist suddenly becomes unavailable. Vague family emergency.
Oh no, after she sold her car.
Exactly. Melissa, who gave up her transportation for her mental health, is left with no car and no consistent therapy. What does that underscore about the vulnerability in seeking help and the costs when those systems fail you?
Melissa's story just powerfully shows the incredible lengths people go to for their emotional and mental health, sometimes making huge financial and personal sacrifices. Selling her car highlights how desperate she was for that consistent support, and then for the therapist to become unavailable right after that sacrifice. It adds this layer of profound disappointment. It really raises big questions about how accessible and reliable crucial mental health support actually is.
Then there's Vanessa. She maxed out 4 credit cards. Total debt, $18,300.
4 cards. For what?
To throw her daughter Kayla an absolutely over-the-top Sweet 16 party, custom neon sign, ice sculpture, multiple outfit changes for Kayla.
Wow, she went all out.
She even skipped paying rent to make sure the party happened exactly as planned. Her reason, she wanted Kayla to feel loved and special.
Okay, I can understand the intention, but skipping rent.
The consequences were immediate. Eviction, lived in her car for a bit, then moved into her sister's basement.
Oh, that's rough. And Kayla appreciated it.
Within a few months, Kayla had deleted most of the party photos from her social media, called them cringe.
Cringe. Oh, the irony. That's painful.
Right. What does that say about how effective, or maybe ineffective, trying to show love through these huge material displays really is in the long run?
Vanessa's story is such a cautionary tale, isn't it? About prioritizing these fleeting, expensive events over basic needs and long-term stability.
Definitely.
Her decision to go deep into debt for a lavish party, driven by wanting her daughter to feel loved, maybe meeting social pressures too, it ultimately led to severe housing problems.
Mm-hmm. And the fact her daughter later just dismissed the whole thing Vanessa sacrificed so much for, it just underscores how misguided it often is, trying to buy affection or create lasting memories by throwing excessive money at things. Marcus never owned a suit in his life, takes out a $30,000 high-interest loan
30 grand. Why?
to impress his girlfriend Dahlia's wealthy family when he went to meet them in Aspen.
Aspen. Okay, so he needed to look the part.
Bought a designer watch, expensive coat, rented a fancy SUV, even made up stuff about his job.
Created a whole persona. How did it go?
Dahlia's family was polite but distant, and Dahlia broke up with him the next week, said she needed someone in her world.
Ouch. So the act didn't work.
Oop! Marcus ended up pawning the watch and coat, but he's still paying off that huge loan years later. What does that highlight about the cost and maybe the futility of trying to fit in by faking wealth?
Marcus's story just vividly shows that intense pressure some people feel to belong to certain social circles and the extreme things they might do to project that image of success.
Yeah.
Taking on massive debt to impress her family was ultimately a superficial, unsustainable plan. Left him with a lasting financial burden, and the relationship still ended.
It raises those critical questions about authenticity in relationships built on pretense and the ultimately hollow pursuit of trying to buy acceptance. Damon grew up with financial struggles, was determined things would be different as an adult.
Okay, trying to break the cycle.
Gets a good job, makes decent money, but consistently overspends. Posts pictures of designer clothes, fancy dinners, trips, all over social media.
Living the high life, or appearing to.
Right. But despite looking affluent, he still felt insecure deep down. Racked up debt, using tons of those buy now, pay later services, always juggling payments, never really feeling secure.
The BNPL trap.
Then one day, his payment gets declined for something small, and it triggers this huge emotional breakdown. He thought money would buy him freedom, happiness. Instead, it became this expensive facade he couldn't keep up anymore. What does that reveal about the link between past money experiences and current spending?
Damon's story really shows that complex connection between money, identity, and the lingering impact of past experiences.
Yeah.
His overspending seems deeply tied to wanting to compensate for his childhood poverty, project success and security, but relying on debt and the eventual financial stumble just highlighted the emptiness of trying to fix internal insecurities with external stuff. It underscores how important it is to address those underlying emotional needs rather than looking for quick fixes through shopping.
Yeah.
And the last one here, Jules, she's only 17. Uses her dad's Amex to impress Devin, a 19-year-old guy she met who worked at a sneaker store. Oh no, dad's Amex at 17.
Devin seemed cool, said all the right things. She bought sought-after sneakers, VIP festival tickets, a hotel room, thinking he'd, reciprocate her feelings or gestures.
Young and hopeful.
But Devin disappears after the festival, leaves Jules with this massive bill her dad finds pretty quickly.
Oh, the fallout.
The money cost was big, sure, but the deeper hurt was realizing she'd just been used, that her generosity meant nothing to him. What does that highlight about the vulnerabilities of young people just seeking acceptance?
Jules' experience is just a stark introduction to the complexities and potential manipulation in relationships, especially for young people looking for connection.
Yeah.
Her desire to impress Devin, feel accepted, led to impulsive spending on her dad's card, realizing her affection wasn't returned, that she was just a means to an end. That's a harsh lesson about the real cost of trying to buy acceptance and learning to spot genuine connection.
Okay, our final section. Looking at how finances and relationships get tangled up, sometimes in unexpected ways. How shared debt can keep people together, maybe even in unhealthy situations.
Right. The financial entanglement.
Maya and Jacob. Their relationship was clearly on the rocks. The connection just wasn't there anymore.
Fading out.
Then, almost randomly, they finance an expensive couch using buy now, pay later. And those monthly payments suddenly became a reason not to break up.
The couch kept them together. Seriously.
Jacob even joked about it, like, can't leave while we still owe on the sofa. But underneath the joke, it was kind of true. Have you seen that happen? Where shared bills unintentionally extend a relationship that's basically over.
Maya and Jacob's story shows that paradoxical situation,
Yeah.
where shared financial ties create this inertia in a relationship, even after the emotional bond is gone.
Right. Inertia's a good word.
The debt becomes this accidental anchor,
Yeah.
making it harder to split up even if they're unhappy. It just highlights the complex ways money ties get woven into emotional ones, sometimes creating these unforeseen roadblocks to moving on.
Alex and Dana. They wanted a huge, lavish wedding, but had almost no savings.
Okay, the expensive wedding dream again.
So Alex decides to fix the money problem by running online scams. Made a lot of money doing it.
Whoa, scams. Seriously?
Yeah. He told himself it was for their love. They booked everything for the dream wedding. Then the police showed up.
Oh my God. When?
Alex got arrested at his own bachelor party.
No. And Dana.
Still married him. Their honeymoon was mostly spent dealing with lawyers and legal stuff. What does Dana's choice say about the complex, maybe unconventional decisions people make for love?
Alex and Dana's story is just,
Yeah.
wow. A dramatic example of how wanting that grand romantic gesture can lead to illegal, life-changing financial choices.
Yeah.
Dana sticking by him despite the crimes. It highlights the incredibly complex, sometimes seemingly irrational nature of love and commitment. Even when facing huge problems and really questionable actions, it really makes you think about the limits of what people will endure for a relationship.
Nina and Brooke, they were roommates. Nina was recently divorced, just wanted some peace.
Okay, a quiet living situation.
But Brooke gets really into what she called healing practices and starts sending Nina random Venmo requests for things like emotional labor.
Excuse me, emotional labor fees. Like what?
Charges for emotional processing sessions, post-breakup dinner support, even energetic cleanup after conflict, added up to a lot over several months.
That is wild. What did Nina do?
When Nina finally confronted her, Brooke accused her of not valuing emotional labor. It blew up. Nina moved out, ended the friendship.
What does that show about needing clear boundaries, even with friends, around money?
Nina and Brooke's story really reveals how financial boundaries can get blurred, even exploited in close relationships, especially if there's maybe a power imbalance or just different expectations about support.
Yeah.
Brooke's unilateral, unexpected charges for what she decided was emotional labor. It just highlights the crucial need for open communication and agreement about money, even in casual roommate situations. It shows how resentment can build and trust can just erode when those boundaries are ignored. Maya and Darian. Relationship moved fast. He moves in quickly. Turns out his credit is bad.
Red flag, maybe.
Maya agrees to co-sign a credit card for him for what he says are just basics, gas and groceries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Famous last words sometimes.
But Maya doesn't know Darian uses that card to buy a $4,700 engagement ring.
For her. Okay, maybe not so bad.
And in the same week, sends flowers to his ex-girlfriend, also charged to Maya's card.
Oh, come on. How did she find out?
Found the receipts months later. His response, "You should be flattered I did it for you," referring to the ring, ignoring the flower.
Flattered? Are you kidding me? That's betrayal.
Totally. What does that illustrate about financial deception within relationships, even when things look committed on the surface?
Maya and Darian's story is just such a clear, painful example of financial deception and a massive breach of trust in a romantic relationship. Darian's actions, using her credit for huge personal buys, and engaging with an ex using her money, it's a profound betrayal of their shared finances, a manipulation of her trust. It really highlights the vulnerability that comes with mixing finances and relationships and the devastating hit to both money and emotional security when that dishonesty happens.
Troy and Nadia, they were really into crypto together, had a big initial win with some novelty coin.
Okay, riding the crypto wave.
But then they invested their entire profit, $40,000, into a new crypto with some kind of romantic theme, hoping to strike it rich again.
Oh no, all of it on a theme coin.
Tragically, yeah. The investment tanked almost immediately, left them with nothing. They spent days just in silence, their shared dream totally shattered. When something like that happens, a shared financial loss, what determines if the relationship survives or breaks?
Troy and Nadia's story just poignantly shows the high-stakes gamble of speculative investments, especially when they're tied up with shared hopes and dreams in a relationship. That quick win, followed by a total loss, really highlights crypto's volatility and how experiences like that can put immense strain on even strong relationships. Losing the shared dream adds this huge layer of emotional devastation on top of the actual money loss.
Eli, young guy, crypto enthusiast,
Yeah.
made a really risky choice with his parents' savings.
Oh no, not the parents' money.
They had $15,000 saved for urgent roof repairs on their house. Eli, convinced he could double it fast trading crypto options, invested all of it without telling them.
Without telling them, oh, Eli.
Instead of doubling it, the market crashed. His parents couldn't afford the repairs and faced eviction.
Eviction because of his gamble.
The fallout was huge. Eli hasn't spoken to his father since. When risk-taking harms others so badly, what's the motivation? Why act without thinking about the impact?
Eli's story is just a stark example of the profound damaging consequences when personal financial risks directly hit the security and well-being of others. His decision to gamble his parents' savings money specifically for essential repairs didn't just cause huge financial loss, it broke his relationship with his father, maybe irreparably. It really underscores the critical ethical responsibility we have when our money choices affect people we care about, and the potential for long-lasting emotional and relational damage.
Anthony, feeling financial pressure, maybe some urgency, makes this huge, ultimately terrible decision. Cashes out his entire 401k to invest in crypto.
His whole retirement, oh dear.
Loses big, feels ashamed, can't tell his girlfriend the truth, starts pulling away from the relationship.
A shame spiral.
When he couldn't pay his bills anymore, she eventually left him. He had to move back in with a parent, even ask his ex-wife for money. In those moments of desperation or wanting to impress someone, what level of risk will people take, even if it blows up their future and relationships?
Anthony's story shows those often misguided decisions that happen when investing is driven by FOMO, fear of missing out, or a desperate hope to fix things fast, especially in a relationship context.
Yeah.
His willingness to risk his long-term security for a super speculative venture and then hiding the losses, it ultimately destroyed his relationship and caused immense personal hardship. It just underlines how crucial rational financial planning, open communication with a partner, and really understanding the risks are.
And finally, Jared, feeling lonely, connects online with someone named Lux who gives him a lot of flattering attention.
Okay, the online connection.
He starts sending her money for various things, hoping to build a real relationship. Despite everything he sent, she eventually just cuts off contact abruptly,
Ghosted him after taking the money.
leaving him with a lot of debt across several credit cards. He calls it an expensive lesson. What does that highlight about how emotional vulnerability can be exploited financially, especially when someone's just looking for companionship?
Jared's story poignantly illustrates the vulnerability that comes with loneliness and the lengths people might go to find connection and validation. His financial support of Lux, which turned out to be purely transactional and one-sided, just highlights the real dangers of seeking emotional fulfillment through money. It underscores the importance of self-worth and the potential for exploitation when emotional needs aren't met in healthy, reciprocal ways.
So as we've gone through all these really personal, often quite surprising stories, a few big themes just keep coming up, don't they?
Absolutely.
It's so clear that for so many people, financial decisions are deeply, deeply tied to their emotional needs. That basic human drive for love, belonging, security, feeling validated. And what's really striking is that pattern of debt being taken on, not really for necessities, but in the hope of getting those powerful emotional needs met.
Indeed. And what these stories powerfully show is that the dollar figures we talked about, that's only part of the cost.
Right.
Beyond the actual debt amount, there are these huge non-monetary consequences. The heavy weight of shame, the often irreparable damage to trust in relationships.
Yeah, the broken trust is huge.
The profound sense of loss when relationships end because of this stuff, and the lasting hit to how someone sees themselves. That can linger long after the money debt is paid off, or even if it never gets paid off.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe, for you listening. As you've heard these really human stories, financial choices driven by the heart, debt taken on for love, belonging, security, validation, consider this. What unspoken emotional debts might you be carrying? Debts that aren't on a credit card statement, but are measured in the currency of your emotional well-being? And what are those invisible debts actually costing you in your life?